With just 70 days until the presidential transition, a second Trump administration with its sights set on retribution weighs heavily on half of the nation's collective conscience. It's as bad as you can imagine for people who care about treating one another with dignity and respect. But as we look to move past the grief of defeat and look ahead to resisting what he plans to do to this country and its most vulnerable, we must first answer how to respond morally in this moment and how to fortify ourselves spiritually for the fight. Here to help us answer these questions on this Moral Monday is Bishop William Barber, co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign and founding director of the Center for Public Theology and Public Policy at Yale Divinity School. Bishop, thank you so much for being here. And I know that you've gotten an earful from people who just need some sort of guidance spiritually in this moment. How are we to look at this country and our own response?
Well, first of all, Joe, thank you so much for having me. You know, this country has a history of making the wrong decisions, and we've had to respond time and time again. And there are some clear things I think that we have to do. One thing, we cannot let Trump and MAGA dictate the mandate. He did not win a mandate victory. His victory wasn't as big as FDR or JFK. FDR was 472 electoral college vote, he didn't win, Johnson, 486. Even if he did win a mandate, no president gets a mandate to violate the Constitution. We have to set our own narrative. He didn't grow his vote. He actually lost votes. Though he won the vote, he didn't get this big increase, only 72 million, about the same thing that he got last time. He didn't bring in a lot of new voters, but people just didn't come together to oppose him. So first we have to make sure that we don't allow him and them to dictate the narrative in this moment. And then secondly, Joy, we have to ask some hard questions. What didn't we do? Poor and low-income voters were infrequent, who represent this massive potential, were still not a clear focus in this electorate. We have to answer that question. How can Democrats win in North Carolina, black and white people win at the top of the tip? I mean, win big, but then not win at the national. We have some serious questions we have to answer about coalition building and about where we are in this moment.
Yeah, I mean, I can just put up the numbers. For the first time in a long time, Democrats won voters who make more than $100,000, and Republicans, Trump, won voters who make $100,000 or less, and particularly did the best among people who make $50,000 or less. Talk about that in a moment, because, I mean, that is something the Poor People's Campaign that you were doing in these last several weeks of the campaign, trying to get the campaign to focus on low-income voters, because those are the most desperate people who are prone to any disinformation that tells them that this candidate is going to give me some money in my pocket.
That's right. And we've got two opposing realities. We got money, you know, is the root of all evil. So corporate money, we've spent $81 billion since Citizens United and $15 billion in this election cycle on presidential and congressional races. And we got to figure out what is it that, for instance, Elon Musk and others really want and what they're trying to do, because they're investing this massive amount of money. But on the other side, if majority of Americans support living wages and health care and lifting the poor, then we can't allow folk inside Democratic politics say you're far left when you're for those issues. The last time Biden and Harris got 56% of poor and low wage voters, and Trump only got 44. This time he went up 5, Democrats went down 6. We cannot have a campaign where we do not focus on the reality of the biggest, largest, most possible expansive voter bloc in the country, which is poor and low-wage voters, particularly when Democrats support the things that they need, living wages, health care, and so forth and so on. But you know, Joy, you asked the question at the top, and I want to make sure we don't run out of time. One of the things we have to do in this moment is we have to do something that our foreparents did. And that is, we have to be clear to America, first of all, that power unrepentantly used to hurt people brings judgment on a nation. It destroys its moral foundations. And we must challenge religious nationalism every time they support this foolishness. We cannot follow him down the rabbit hole when he says crazy things and get our eyes off the policy. But then we have to do the same thing they did in 1877 when they had a bad election. They cried. Then they shook themselves, they got up and began to fight. Or in 1896, when Plessy versus Ferguson became the law of the land, they cried, they were angry, they got up and fight. fought. In 1965, when Emmett Till was killed 1 year after the Brown decision, they cried, they hurt, they got up and fought. September 1963, when children were killed in a Birmingham church, they cried, they hurt, they got up and fought. We have to have that same kind of tenacity in this moment. Nothing else can be our reality. We cannot settle. We have to cry, we have to grieve, and then we have to get up and fight. And this fight is in the states this time, state-based building up from the bottom.
Indeed. Bishop William Barber,